Thanks for tuning into the Upstream Life Podcast. Join us as we dive into Scripture and tell real-life stories that we hope will educate, equip, inspire, and challenge you to live a life against the flow.
Get ready as we spend the next several weeks on our series, This Means War, where we discuss spiritual warfare and the different ways it impacts our daily lives. Let's dive in.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
How well do you know your enemy? Ooh.
Well, I don't really have enemies other than, like the enemy, at least I think.
Ooh.
I don't think I have any enemies other than, so I would say I probably don't know him as well as I should because I think that we're taught a little bit to not know him too well or to not give him too much power.
You're kind of being a little secretive here right now. For people that are listening, they might not have any idea what you're talking about.
Well, they're going to find out.
Let me ask you one more question before we jump right into this thing. Because we're going to get ready to get into a series mostly around Ephesians and all about this armor and how to put it on and how to take our stand against the wiles of the devil.
Is that what it's called? The wiles?
The wiles of the devil.
Is it wiles?
W-I-L-E-S.
You Googled it?
It's in the scripture.
The wiles.
I didn't need to Google it. It's right there.
The wiles.
It's right there
All
in the
right.
Bible. The wiles of the devil.
Okay.
All right. So whether we like it or not, he is our arch enemy number one.
Yep.
Arch enemy number one. Now, I've coached football for years. I've wrestled. I've done different things where you kind of know you're going against an opponent. And you can be really impressed by like yourself and your offensive game and maybe how tough you are or what your record looks like. But how important do you think it is to also know your opponent?
Yeah, it's pretty important.
Yeah.
I know, obviously, because I've lived in the house with you coaching and then now obviously having a kiddo that's in football and having our son-in-law, watching him go through football. Like, obviously, I've seen a lot of times everybody watching film before and after games. And so, obviously, it's important, at least in the realm of football.
We're talking about your enemy today.
Yep.
All right. Enemy number one. Not just our enemy, but also the enemy of God, which is a really interesting thing to think about. That God himself has an enemy, something that completely opposes all that is good, all that is righteous, and he's just at war.
Yeah. Crazy, huh?
Yeah. Crazy.
Crazy. What? It's not funny, babe. It's
No,
war.
it's
war.
not. It's not funny. And I'll
Why
tell
are
you
you laughing?
because I'm laughing because we're going to get into a place here where it's like we're going to talk about an enemy and he's going to sound super formidable. He's going to sound scary. But the reality that you and I get to walk in for those that are, walking in Christ or going upstream is he's like a toothless lion. So he is extremely formidable. We really need to know who he is and how he works, what his character is, what his job title is, what he's waking up every day to know how to build our own defense and what do we have in our arsenal to go after him with. But it also is partly funny because as big and as bad as this devil thinks he is, he's already crushed, he's already defeated, he's already under the foot of Jesus.
Yeah, for sure.
And that makes me giggle a little. Is that okay?
It's fine.
All right. Well, I think first and foremost, so most of everything that we're going to be talking about in these next 4 weeks is going to be coming out of Ephesians. So for today, I just grabbed one little chunk. I'll read it and then we'll kind of just go from there. You with me?
Good. I'm with you.
All right. So Ephesians 6:10. Finally, be strong in the Lord and his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So this is where it starts, is this warning from Paul that a day will come in all of our lives, and for some of us, more often than not, that the devil's schemes will come against us, that he will test us, he will try us. For like I said, for some, it's more often than not. But it does say one thing to know is that the devil will try his best to keep you away from goodness. When you think of the devil, how many names can you come up with? You've been through scripture enough times. First of all, how many names do you think there are for Satan?
I think there's a lot, actually. I think there's more than we typically use.
Take a guess.
Well, I'd be cheating because I think I already saw
Oh,
your
did you
notes.
see it on my notes? All
Why
right,
don't
so
you just tell us?
there's 17.
Right, I
Well,
know.
there's probably more than 17 the way you break it down, but a lot of them, like I said, they're names, but most oftentimes the names are more referred
Like a
to
characteristic.
a characteristic
Yeah.
of him, or like I said, a job description. Like
Mhm.
I didn't even realize that when I say Satan, I'm actually referring to his job description. Or when I say the devil, I'm talking more about his character than his actual name.
Mm.
So anyways, I'm just going to rip off the 17 names that I came up with.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of bust
Wait,
them
let me
apart.
think which ones I know. So, like,
Okay.
obviously I know Satan,
Yep.
obviously the devil,
Yep.
Beelzebub.
Do you know what Beelzebub means?
I don't.
All right. So here's what's funny about Beelzebub. Beelzebub actually means Lord of the Flies.
Oh.
Is its literal translation.
Like flies on poop or?
Poop. Yeah. So
Yeah,
absolute.
I feel like I did know that.
Absolute dung pile. So it's like when that word is being used, it's just an interesting picture analogy.
Angel of Light.
Yeah.
Is that one of them?
Yeah.
Prince of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
What are the other ones? I know there's lots. I just can't think of them all.
Think of even in the beginning of time. What was he then?
Well, he was a serpent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Think about the end of time, Revelations. Can you think of any mythical beasts that he may be referred to? The dragon.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just going to rip them off real quick.
Okay.
The accuser, our adversary, a roaring lion, angel of light, devil, Satan, serpent, dragon, prince of darkness, father of lies.
Father of lies.
Beelzebub, one of your favorites.
That's kind of a funny word.
Tempter, God of this age, deceiver, and ruler of the air. I found that really interesting because when you start breaking some of those down, like, I mean, he's given titles like a God of this age or a ruler of the air, a prince of darkness. You know, those are some powerful, authoritative names. What did you say like his main goal is? What would you say his job description is?
Well, I mean, you could sum it up easily by saying just to like ruin our lives.
Yeah.
But in any way he can to destroy, kill, devour,
steal.
Keep us from Jesus.
Yeah.
Keep us, you know,
so what
wounded.
What does that look like? You know, so, you know, for those of us that are on here that are Christ followers that, you know, just wake up every single day, you know, we're trying to do the absolute best with what we have. In what ways does that how does that set with you to know that there's somebody that's in direct opposition with you? Now, the one thing that is really interesting is when it calls him the Prince of the Air, it also talks about the fact that he's a ruler of this world, meaning he has all of these things that he can infiltrate to come against us, right? So if it's a thing of the world, politics, money, countries, nationalism, you know, televisions, media, all of these different things, if they are part of this
anything
world,
he can do to sow discord.
Yeah. But what is that like? What is that like to just, you know, just a lovely mom, you know, a wonderful,
thanks,
a
Sam.
lovely mom, a wonderful wife, waking up every single day trying to do the best that she can, and knowing that there is an opponent out there that wants to kill, steal, and destroy. That doesn't sound very nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's not very nice. It stinks.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But I think it looks different for everybody. You know, I think
Sure.
that obviously we all have different weaknesses. We all have different, you know, things that, are ways that he would easily be able to mess with us, you know? And so what he might use tactical wise for me is not what he's going to use for you or for anybody else.
Absolutely.
So I think, you know, like you said earlier, that's why it's really important to study and know like what some of the tactics are, because I think sometimes what we can do is we can think he does this.
Yeah.
And then we don't necessarily pay attention to or realize like he also can do this, and this. And then I think also what can happen sometimes is we focus so much on like what he can do that we also don't focus enough on what he's not able to do and what authority we have over him.
Absolutely.
You know? But I guess, for me, it just looks different. Like, I think even in every season, it can look different, you know? Like there's obviously the last couple years have looked really different for us than
for the nation.
Yeah, that's what I mean is it's like the country, the world, like everybody's been dealing with, you know, the effects of a pandemic and, you know, just how that affects every aspect of people's lives, whether it's their job, their family life. I mean, families are more stressed out than ever before. And, you know, just there's so many different things. And he's going to use that situation to get in ways that he wouldn't have prior, you know? So I think
Absolutely.
it's wise to know that he's not really limited in like his tactics,
Mhm.
but yes, he also is limited in
Yeah.
like what he is allowed and not allowed to do.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that I hope that we pull out of this podcast or, this YouTube channel, whatever we do is, bringing information to light, but also being reminded constantly who the victor is.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
say this thing around the house, that we fight from victory, not for victory.
Hmm.
But it also doesn't mean that the enemy went away.
Right.
It's kind of
And it
like,
doesn't mean that every day you're
yeah.
going to feel the
And
victory.
it doesn't mean just because you defeated him once that he's just now going to leave you
Yeah,
alone.
right.
We
If anything,
have,
if anything, he's just going to shift directions and
absolutely.
get you in a way that you're not expecting, right?
Yeah.
Because if I know, like for me, I know that he's going to get with me in, especially like once a month, like just my level of, patience and kindness, right?
Yeah.
If I know that, like I've known this forever, and it's like, it's not like he's just gonna like this time of the month, this month, he's going to be like, I think I'll let her alone next month.
Right.
Like you
Yeah.
have to be wise to it. And even if like, he's like, okay, well, she's already got this figured out. Let's try
Mhm.
something else,
Right.
like that there also is that possibility,
Yeah.
like he's not going to just, go away anytime soon.
Well, let's talk about a couple of those things because
Not
that.
to talk about my period on the podcast, but ladies, we
Yeah,
know.
we know what once a month means when a woman's talking. Every man in the world does.
Shh, I'm pretty good.
So here's the thing. Let's talk about this character real
Maybe.
quick. All right, we've kind of drove the point home that this opponent of ours, this enemy of ours, basically is his main job is to steal, kill, and destroy. His job is also relentless, meaning like he
Mhm.
doesn't give up, right? Having coached football, I've watched some big scores come against our teams, and you watch the wind be sucked out of our sails, and we lose the fight. That's not true of our enemy. Like our enemy is like a wave crushing against a wall. It just never stops. Its job is to try to break you down. So even in begging for
It's like a wave pool.
right. So you
You
think
know the
of
wave pool, like
yes.
where you're in the deep end and
Yeah.
you're literally thinking, I'm going to literally drown right
Yeah,
now.
right.
And you're hoping that it's just going to stop, but it's
Right.
not going to stop until it's supposed to stop.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about characteristics that directly oppose God, God is full of mercy. This guy is merciless.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? God is filled with grace. There is no grace in our enemy. He is the direct.
Yeah, it's not like he's
polar-
like, oh,
Oh,
poor baby. Like
wow,
she's really feeling it right now.
Yeah, that one
Let's-
almost cost him
yeah.
his marriage, or that one almost cost him his job, or
Yeah.
wow, he almost got addicted, or whatever.
Yeah.
You name it. Like his
Yeah, it's not like he's feeling sorry for any of us.
and then he pries on those, right?
Mhm.
So when I was thinking about all of this, and like I said, when you focus in on your enemy, like I said, you can feel formidable, but we need to be reminded that he is under our feet,
Mhm.
right? And his main tactic is lies. That helps a lot to know that he's the father of lies. And what he uses his lies the most for is to steal our identity, an identity
Mhm.
that we have away from what God gives us. But what's interesting about
Wait, say that again.
Yeah.
You said away from what God gives us. I didn't know what you mean.
So
when you just said
we
that.
get a new identity in Christ,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
We're a brand new creation. What we once were attached to in Adam as far as being a slave to sin and just all the things that come along
Mhm.
with that, our freedom came with Christ's shed blood. So although the truth of an enemy still is out there, he no longer has power over us except the power we give him.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what breaks my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Is to know when we have moments where we feel like we're losing the battle to the enemy, it's ground we've given him. And that's what we're going to get into in this study so much, and why there's a part of this verse that says stand firm
Mm-hmm.
and not give up ground. Have you ever felt like what is an area of your life, you want to be vulnerable with all of us for a second, what is an area of your life where it's not true, but the enemy has convinced you to believe it's true, and it's an area that kind of just erodes at you or wreaks havoc in your life?
I would say like the last couple of years, I've just felt very different in that, maybe it's getting older and like having less energy. Maybe it's trauma. Maybe it's just like the world beating you up. But I think that I feel many times like I'm not as capable as I was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And the reality is that that's not actually true. If anything, I'm probably more capable because of some of the lessons that I've learned. But I will say that that's definitely an area where I feel like he is trying to get in there with me and
Yeah.
just make me believe like that I'm not, and
Sure.
that, oh, you might as well just like give up,
Yeah.
or you might as well just like, why are you wasting your time? Why don't you just focus over
Mhm.
here instead? Or, oh, you're such a loser that you didn't get that done
Well,
today,
let's
or,
talk. Yeah. So that loser component, like,
hmm
do you sometimes just feel super defeated, just like
Oh,
in
of
your own
course.
skin?
Of course.
And what are kind of those things that are playing over in your head?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I just kind of spoke to that a little bit, but I
Yeah.
think it's like it is for anybody. I just think that the circumstances can be different for everyone,
Yeah. Absolutely.
but, I think that, if you're a stay-at-home mom, he's going to tell you that you're a terrible mom. He's going to
Sure.
say like, "Oh, you just lost it again."
Sure.
Oh, like you're going to screw them up
Yeah.
for the rest of their lives, or they're going to grow up to hate you, like
Hmm.
just some of those things. Or if you are a working mom, he's going to be like, "Oh, you're such a
Yeah.
loser. Like, how are you going to leave your baby home during the day? Like, what is wrong with you? You should be home with your, like just,
Yeah.
it's like, I think like no matter what you do,
Hmm.
he's going to be coming at you,
Yeah.
or yeah, I can't speak to what it's like to be a man, a husband, a father, or any of that stuff, but I can, obviously
Hmm.
speak towards like being a wife, being a mom,
Yeah.
and just the kind of tension with like that being obviously like such a major part of who I am. And then at the same time, like I also am somebody outside of that,
Right.
and I think that's a way that he can easily mess with me and leave me like pretty confused
Hmm.
about like what I'm supposed to be doing, what
Yeah.
I'm not, you know. And it's easy, I think, like if you're really focused on the things that he's infiltrating your mind with and you aren't fighting it or combating it, then what happens is that it's taking your focus and your attention off of what you actually are
Yes.
supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
I think that's like it's a really fancy tactic he
Yeah.
has.
It certainly isn't my statement, but the whole battlefield is the mind, or the mind is the
Battlefield
battlefield.
of the mind, yeah.
It's like, it's so real.
Mhm.
There's days where the world can kind of close in on me, and I can feel like my whole life and my world is being lived inside.
Mhm.
Like I can forget that the sun is out, or
Mhm.
that it's warm out, or that food still tastes good. And I can just be so internalized. And if I'm listening, if I'm entertaining, those lies of an enemy that is just got one goal
Mhm.
of stealing from me, killing me, or destroying me,
Mhm.
man, sometimes I can be his best friend, and like
Oh yeah.
giving him those
Yeah, like
inches.
giving him the
Yeah,
ammunition. It's
giving him
like
the ammunition.
yeah, it's like you're literally handing him the bullets.
And
Yeah,
that's one. Yeah.
I'm totally obviously, you know me better
Yeah.
than most people, and that's something for sure, like, it's a major struggle area for me. It's just, like, worry and
Mhm.
all of those different things, it's like, literally this morning, Ayana, I usually hear from her right away in the
Mhm.
morning. I haven't heard from her. It's been a few hours. I'm like, "Oh my gosh,"
Yeah.
and my mind will literally paint the most, like, awful, morbid picture
Mhm.
about what's happening, and I'm thinking I need to get on a plane and go investigate, like it's crazy like what
Yeah.
can happen in your mind in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And if you don't have tools or if you're not picking up the tools that you have to combat that,
Yeah.
it can be a really devastating place to live, your
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah. Yeah. I shared this morning a little bit just to give a different side of it. You gave a beautiful insight of like where the enemy can come against, your roles as a
Mhm.
mom, or, whatever. And this morning I shared in our Devo, just money for me.
Mhm.
I think that also is attached to kind of a dad, a provider,
Yeah.
provision, or whatever. But I feel like, last year, especially coming off the back of a very challenging year, a COVID year that nobody had any control over. I mean, everybody was fighting for themselves. That it was just a year to really kind of just lose ground in
Mhm.
particular areas. And all of a sudden, finances become highlighted, where they're not normally highlighted, and worry sets in. And then, like, it's almost like, okay, let me go. I need to go fix this, or I need to work or strive in these
Mm.
particular areas. And it was just clear as day, as God was reminding me, studying this, that there is an enemy out there that it's not always about destroying. Sometimes it's just preventing and keeping you from advancing forward, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But he was just like, you don't necessarily have a money issue. You have an enemy issue. You have, a devil issue, and I
Mhm.
think about that sometimes when I'm feeling, lazy or unmotivated. Sometimes it's not so much that it's a personal identity issue. It's just me giving in to,
Yeah, what he's telling
some
you.
bad tapes that play in my head. And that's one of his names. He's an accuser.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not just that he comes at us. The accuser portion of him, the picture is being in like a public court
Mm-hmm.
where all these people are around, and he's accusing you in
Mm-hmm.
front of everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and it eventually just kind of beats you down. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, I am this, or I am that.
Yeah, and I know we have talked about this several times that, it's easier to combat it when it's just like blatant lies, right? Like if
Right.
he were to come at me and be like, Sammy, you're the most selfish, horrible, rotten turd. I probably wouldn't like super easily believe that
Right.
because I really don't see myself in that light.
Mhm.
But if I were to if he were to come at me and be like, your priorities are kind of screwed up because you want to be spending more time doing this, but yet you keep doing this. That is a truth,
Yeah.
right? And so what happens is like we've talked about, is when it's a lie, it's easier to combat. But when you have a truth that you've given him, when you want to do something and you do not do it, or you don't want to do something and then you do it, or when you sin, or when you fall short, or when you have something that he can use against you, it's
geez.
it can be so much more difficult to combat because
my goodness.
he's literally beating the crap out of you with a truth.
Absolutely. And that goes to the whole masquerading. It says that he can come in the form of light,
Mm-hmm.
right? So basically what you're saying is, if the devil shows up, like we would assume the devil would show up, as, a roaring lion, trying to devour me, a little bit easier to prepare yourself against an enemy that's coming at you. But sometimes, like you said, he's just playing your own cards against you. We've all, maybe lost some time, doing some, whatever. We could go on and on and on about those different things, but the truth.
Yeah, when we fall short and he uses it against us,
Yeah.
it's like you even need to be that much more understanding of like what his tactics are and what power you have in them,
Right.
and like what forgiveness you have in them, right? Because he can only use a sin against you if you aren't reminding yourself that God doesn't see it anymore, right? Like that if you're in him, you're forgiven, it's wiped away. So like just even saying that out loud and being like, wait a minute, like, yes, did I mess up? Yes, absolutely. But I can go to God and be like, hey, I'm sorry, like, forgive me. And then boom, gone, forgotten, moved on, right? And so, it's interesting because I think as somebody, like, obviously you didn't grow up in the church, I did. I think that sometimes there's like these opposite extremes and not necessarily like balance when it comes to the enemy. I think there's one extreme where people like don't even recognize or talk about him.
Right.
And I would say that was probably more my
You
experience
often hear,
growing up.
don't give the devil more credit than he deserves. Like, I hear that all the time.
Yeah. But so I would say like there's one camp where it's like you just don't even talk about him. You don't even so you're not even really preparing the body for his tactics. And then there's the other extreme where people blame him for literally everything.
Sure.
You sin, it's his fault. Nope, actually it's still yours.
No accountability.
Like,
not taking any accountability.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's wisdom in finding kind of the balance because yes, he absolutely is capable of throwing the entire kitchen sink at you and everything in it. But you also do have the power to have victory over it. And also, like, you just have your sin nature too. Like, sometimes you just screw it up,
Absolutely.
So I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like
some of those things.
The devil is a strange topic in the church.
A super strange topic, and that's kind of why I thought it was important to bring it to light because, truth be told, people are struggling out there.
Oh, of
people
course.
are having a hard time out there.
It's been a rough few years.
There are some sincere, accurate people out there that are still, feeling like joy is being robbed from them, or self-control is being robbed from them, or patience, or kindness, or whatever. We're in a season where everything seems to be in opposition of each other.
Yeah, we are fragmented tough. For sure.
And I think one of the foolish things to do is not understand, or is to not understand that there's a progression happening. From the beginning of time, there's a progression, and evil progresses. So knowing who represents evil, right? As Paul is telling us here, there are times where, it may feel like we're in opposition with people or nations or whatever, but underneath that is also something spiritual, something bigger, something greater. Yep. And not understanding that, not only does that,
It's foolish. Like
right,
it's really kind of foolish for us to not recognize that and prepare for that.
exactly,
And
because,
I mean,
yeah.
if we're being honest, I think that sometimes we don't prepare, and I think that sometimes we
Oh,
neglect this area, and it's sad because it's like it's like the main area that's like trying
yeah,
to screw up our lives. You
right.
know, it's
That's
like
what I mean.
imagine if
Yeah,
you had like your big toe was infected and half
right.
of it was rotting off.
Yeah,
Like you would do something about it. You
right,
wouldn't just let it sit there and fester because you know
right.
that it could spread up your leg and into your bloodstream and,
Yeah,
up to your heart and into your brain and boom, you're gone,
yeah,
right? Like you understand that. And yet we know this, like we have this knowledge, but I think we don't give it as much credit. We're like,
right,
oh, it's just like, a bump
right.
on our nail,
Yeah. When you're
rather than
talking,
really recognizing like, well, this is like legit. Like that's like
absolutely.
his main
Right.
role is to completely screw up our lives.
And that's kind of what I wanted to paint, the picture of is, think how many things that we do blame, though.
Yeah.
Think how many things that we say are against us. The
Hmm.
man is against us. Sometimes our race is against us. Our poverty is against us. Our
Which,
countries.
yes, they
Right.
can be.
No,
Absolutely.
I understand.
Gotta be
Me,
careful with that
me,
one,
me
babe.
saying it that way is not saying that it isn't against us,
Yeah.
but underneath all of that stuff is also something that is imminent. It's as tangible as any of the things I just listed, but tends to be a little bit more unseen and a little bit, less talked about. But it is the thing that can actually destroy the most important parts of us.
Right. Well, because okay, race is an issue.
Yeah,
It can be an issue.
right.
And not that that's not there and not that the enemy is just making it all happen, but it's something that's there and something that he will use.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
when you talk about a ruler of the air, a prince of this world, a prince of
He's
darkness,
opportunistic.
he's opportunistic. But like I said, he can also use those
Hmm.
things to fulfill his job description.
Yep.
Of
Destroy, kill.
keeping you out of relationship with, fellowship with one another, fellowship with God. Division.
Hmm.
Division at the end of the day is always weakening. So however you can weaken populations,
Hmm.
you can be stronger for your attack. It's a deep, way to think about it. But what's important about it is once we can address that we know there's an enemy out there and we can admit and talk about how formidable he is, then it makes the reason for the rest of what we're going to study that much more important.
Yeah.
Why should I know how to put on this armor that God has given me?
Yeah.
He's
For
telling
sure.
me arrows are going to come my way, right? He says fiery arrows are going to come at you. Here's a bunch of stuff I'm going to give you to protect yourself against it. And I'm even going to give you a couple of things to be able to fight with against it. That gets to be exciting, for any warrior spirit person, but is also to give hope, because those moments where the devil has actually got a hold of you, maybe you've given him that ground, you've maybe weren't able to stand firm and you took some steps back in retreat. Those are scary places.
Hmm.
They're hard places.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they're not talked about as much as they should be because
Mm-mm.
I think for several reasons. I think one, sometimes people have a hard time admitting that they've screwed up. Two, I think that sometimes the Christian community can be a dangerous place to be real and to be vulnerable. And three, I think sometimes like Satan's also able to blind us to the
Mhm.
reality of how far things have gotten out of control.
Yeah.
It's like I saw this lady, I have to admit that I was on TikTok. I saw this lady on TikTok who I've been following her journey. She's on like day 12 of being sober.
Yeah.
And so every day she comes on and she's like, it's day whatever. I'm not going to drink. This is kind of how I got through this day. This is how I'm going to get through this day, depending on the time of day that she's posting. And she'll answer different people's questions. And one of the questions that somebody asked her was, how do you know you were an alcoholic? How much were you even drinking?
Yeah.
And I loved her response because she was like, well, I don't know that I get to determine like what constitutes an alcoholic for you or for anybody else, but I know like what it is for me. And for me, it was just recognizing that, I was dependent. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't do this. Like I couldn't go one day without having a drink. And does that mean that I was obliterated? No. But I think what happens is we can look at things from like the most catastrophic place
Yeah.
is the only place that's bad, right? And like if I'm not completely obliterated every day, I don't have a problem.
Right.
Right? Whereas this lady was like, hey, like I could very easily recognize that when everybody went to bed and I'm sitting there with my cup of vodka at night, like that's a warning sign, right?
Yeah,
And so I think sometimes what happens is we don't recognize how we get to that point, like how we get to the catastrophic place, because there's little like markers on the way that we're either ignoring, we're scared to admit, or feel good in the moment, you know?
And that goes back to what you were saying earlier is, you know, he doesn't come on with a full-fledged attack in his, you know, his scary little red latex.
Right. Yes.
Latex outfit
with his horns.
Pitchfork. We would know to call it out the devil, man. He's slow, he's crafty, and he's really, really, really good at his job. And he has a lot of helpers. Yeah. You know, so I always tell people, you know, if you can't recognize that there's an enemy against you, I'm not certain you're very dangerous for the kingdom. Because, you know, in a closing statement on this, the one thing we have to remember is even all of these principalities of the air, the devil himself is not omnipresent. He's not all places at the same time like God can be. So he does move as a strategic warrior. He moves into positions where he feels most threatened. Yeah. If his job is to accumulate as many souls to keep for himself, to not let them go into heaven, he's going to go where he feels most attacked. And,
and his plan of attack is going to be different. And since you brought up football earlier, this reminds me, because obviously I've watched a lot of football over the years, growing up with a dad who loved football, and obviously our family loves football, and you coached for lots of years. Now we have kids playing and whatever. I've watched a lot of games from the sidelines, right? Like not on the field. And there's like two, I feel like in my perspective, there's like two kinds of teams, right? There's the ones who are literally like, they come out like guns blazing and they're ready to just rumble, and they come out and they just like obliterate, you know, play one, you're like, holy crap. Like these guys are not messing around. And the team that's on the offense is like, oh crap. And they have like one of two options, right? They either meet that level or they're going to get obliterated, right? Or you have the others that it's like they come out and you're like not too scared of them. You're like, oh, these guys, you know, whatever, like we're going to beat them, and you get a little cocky, and then you realize like they're a second halfer team, right? Where they're going to come back from halftime and they're going to be ready to rumble then, you know? And so it's like, I think the enemy is such that way, like just depending, like he knows who he's playing against, right? And so for some people, you know, there's definitely areas of my life, your life, other people's lives where, you know, he knows, like, if I come out guns blazing in this department, boom, I'm shut down. Like, they're going to recognize it and they're going to be, you know, ready to come back at me. Whereas, you know, he could also look at you and be like, oh, like, she's not really paying attention to this area. I'm going to come out, you know, guns blazing. And so, it's so interesting. And I love thinking of it from the football like it's standpoint, just because we've watched so much football.
It's easy for me to go there too. Well, thanks for setting me up with a nice closing statement as we finish this one up and we prepare for what is it like to have the armor of God for people. And it's just what you were saying, the difference between confidence and cockiness. You know, when you think about teams too, it's very, very important for us to be confident in who we are, what team we're on. We are on the team that gets to boast a W in the end. But in the meantime, we have an opponent that is going to work at us. And really, the only way we are truly victorious is if we don't quit. If we don't give up, if we hold firm.
Listen to our coach.
If we hold firm.
Rely on our teammates. If
we hold firm to these things that Paul is talking about, we then will be partakers in that. And the side of cockiness is to know that without setting up a defense, without setting up an offense, and just meandering through life
like
as if like this toothless lion can't hurt me, because the world is riddled with people that have been harmed by Satan and his tactics to keep them separated from goodness and righteousness and from God.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for joining me, babe.
Good stuff.